Welcome back. So you'll remember how many different waves of the COVID-19 pandemic we've been through. How there was the hard lockdown of the first wave, the sheer horror of the third wave, where so many people passed away in such a short period of time in July 2020. Well, we're in a very different place now. More and more people are getting vaccinated. The virus appears to have mutated in different ways. And in some ways, biologically and virologically, we're more used to the virus. But there is now a warning that we could have another wave, and in fact, in just the next few weeks and months. The warning comes from Professor Barry Schoub. You'll remember him, of course. Professor Schoub, good afternoon to you. Why are you expecting another wave of COVID-19 to come through?
Yeah, good afternoon, Stephen. You know, if we look back at COVID, it does appear to be periodic. We get these cycles of waves, upswings of the virus, and then a low trough, upswing again. So we've gone through 5 of these cycles, and they seem to be kind of fairly consistent. They last for a couple of months, and then they go away, and then they go away for probably about 2 or 3 months, and then they come back again. So it seems to be a cyclical event, and it's probably to do with the immunity of the population versus the ability of the virus to build itself up to spread through the community. So these waves are probably not going to go away. The virus is still around. In fact, the virus has learned to kind of escape immunity, the immunity from the vaccine, immunity from past infection, and because of that, it's still around. So it's probably building up. Now I'm speaking very, very colloquially rather than virologically, but eventually we will get a breakthrough and we will get a wave again. And if it still has the same periodicity as in the past, then we can expect a wave more or less about the end of next month, maybe into October. Look, there's nothing that's absolute in this. It's a bit of a guessing game, a bit of a speculative game. But I think we can anticipate, going on past history, that we will have another wave, a 6th wave, coming probably in about 6 weeks' time, or maybe 4 to 6 weeks' time from now.
Do we know what kind of variant or subvariant or variant recombination recombinant we could actually be dealing with? And what I'm trying to get to is that we saw at the very beginning, the first few waves, how some were more severe than others, led to more severe illness and disease than others. Do we know at this stage how severe the symptoms of any new wave could be?
Stephen, the bottom line is we don't know. We can make an educated guess, and an educated guess based on looking at the actual trajectory of the virus, the way that it's evolving. And it seems to be evolving in 2 directions. The one direction is that it's giving it an advantage to escape immunity, as I mentioned earlier, and thereby propagate itself or multiply and spread. That's the one thing. Other thing which is maybe more fortunate is that it seems to be less and less virulent. It may be partly due to the virus itself, and there's evidence for this, and it also may be partly due to the fact that the population is building up immunity. They're building up immunity from past exposure to the virus, as well as being vaccinated. And because of that, the combination of these 2 things, it seems to be getting milder and milder. And we can expect that our next 6th wave will probably be a mild one, probably like the 5th wave, and maybe even milder than that. But we can't be absolutely sure. The reason we can't be absolutely sure that this is a pretty unpredictable virus. It does keep mutating. It does keep changing. It may, I think it's unlikely, and most people think it's unlikely, but it may be also a virulent strain, but I think that's unlikely. But we've got to expect, and therefore I think it's important that people get vaccinated.
Well, I was going to come to that. I mean, we've almost forgotten how important vaccination is. A lot of vaccination sites, of course, still operating. You hardly see it in the news anymore. I'm happy to blame myself for that. So one of the problems, we've almost forgotten how important it is to still get vaccinated against COVID-19.
Yeah, Stephen, I think this is important. You know, the virus is still there. It hasn't disappeared. It will come back. So hopefully mildly, but I think we want to protect ourselves. And unfortunately, this is the one thing which we failed. We haven't yet got enough people vaccinated, covered with the vaccine, a safe, effective vaccine. Unfortunately, we're falling behind there. And we do need to get particularly the older people, particularly the more vulnerable people, we need to protect them with the vaccine. The vaccine doesn't totally protect you from getting infected, but at least it'll protect you from getting the more severe form of the disease.
We've seen, in a way, what happens in the rest of the world doesn't necessarily happen here and vice versa when it comes to this virus. So, for example, Europe is sort of, having its first big sort of summer holiday in 2 years, almost as if the virus never happened. They've got other problems to deal with, of course. The same in New Zealand, which didn't really suffer much at all. The same in Australia. China, a completely different story. People having lockdowns, still having a high number of cases from time to time, depending on their approach. Is there any link between the possibility that we may have another wave and what could happen in the rest of the world? Or has the virus sort of delinked itself from different regions?
Yeah, if you look at the rest of the world, it's kind of very heterogeneous. In some places like Japan, in fact in Australia as well, they are having quite a severe epidemic. In fact, their mortality is probably one of the highest since the start of the pandemic. So it is very heterogeneous. We're very low, some countries very high. I don't think that we can it's not like flu where it goes from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere. I don't think we can really take very much from other countries. It's really kind of how we ourselves behave, how we ourselves control the infection. The one thing with South Africa is that we've got very, very high levels of immunity. In fact, probably one of the highest in the world. And this is probably because it has spread very rapidly through our population. In many cases, people aren't even aware that they got infected. In some of the studies, it's up to 90 or over 90% of the samples that were tested to show levels of antibodies, or protective antibodies. So in that way, we are fortunate in this country.
Professor Barry Schoub, really appreciate the time. Thank you very much indeed. A reminder, of course, that the virus has not gone away.